Good afternoon and welcome back. So our next speaker is a GreenHopper guru. Martin's been on the GreenHopper team for nearly 3 years now, in fact, since shortly after we acquired GreenHopper. Martin's been a tremendous driving force in bringing the visual language and the actual user experience and user interface of GreenHopper forward. And so a lot of what you're being seeing today in the Rapid Board, and indeed what you'll find out more about this afternoon in the State of the Union, is in large part due to Martin's efforts. So I'd like you all to welcome Martin Jobson, a GreenHopper guru. He's absolutely fantastic. Cheers.
Thank you, Nick. So as Nick said, my name is Martin Jobson. I'm on the GreenHopper team at Atlassian, and I'd like to share some of the things that I've learned. I'd like to talk about how GreenHopper use Agile to build GreenHopper the product. So that's how the team build the product. And share some of the learnings. So prior to joining Atlassian, the only kind of Agile I'd done before was of the non-Agile variety. I used to work at a large media company, and the developers weren't involved in any of the planning meetings. At one large kick-off meeting for a large project, the developers were all called into a room, and along the wall of this room was the biggest Gantt chart you've ever seen. And on that Gantt chart, every piece of work was itemized with a fixed date upon it. And they said we'd do Agile, but we didn't. We just did stand-ups. So joining Atlassian and the GreenHopper team really opened my eyes to some of the benefits of Agile. And I'd like to share some of those things that I hold dear about Agile. So for me, Agile is a really good contract. I believe it's really good for developers, for your developers. And I think when it's done right, it offers benefits for both sides. For the stakeholders, value is delivered sooner, but for the developers and the team members, there's a level of autonomy. In Scrum, for example, there's a discussion and an agreement on the work to be committed in the next sprint. It's negotiable and fair. It's a big difference from just being drip-fed work. And I think this way of working increases buy-in and gives a sense of ownership to those involved. And Atlassian takes this even further with our 20% and our previously known as FedEx Days. These are both initiatives that give developers time to work on things that they choose. And this opens the door for innovation, but also to fix things that they see need fixing, but that may not make it to the top of the backlog. There's some happy winners of a previous FedEx Day. And I think that teams are empowered when they're involved in activities outside of their tasks. The GreenHopper team have tried a few exercises, some of them mentioned in earlier talks. We've done paper prototyping, we have a design wall, and we've done story mapping exercises. So design wall is a space near the team where we post up ideas, concepts, things we're working on, so they're visible to everyone. And the team frequently meet around the wall and discuss all those things, and everyone gets to have their input. We also done story mapping a couple of times. At the beginning of the Rapid Board, we all locked ourselves away in a room, armed with just index cards and marker pens. And as a team, we mapped out everything the user would need to do to be successful in their goal. And so everyone was involved in breaking down all the activities, and then from these activities, the tasks that were needed to be done. And at the end of that, across the wall was a full story. You could walk through all the processes needed to achieve the goals. And after we did this, we took turns to remove items off the wall, because we were looking for our minimum viable product. And by the end of this, we just had the core features that were required to ship a usable product. But more than this, because the team has all been involved, the team now has a much, well, I was going to say it actually forms the basis for the product backlog, but the team being involved has a much better idea of the vision and the roadmap of what's to come. Working just sprint by sprint, you don't get to see this kind of bigger picture. So working in an agile way should protect us from burnout, and if you have like big bang releases with the deadlines that come. And GreenHopper releases very frequently. Currently we release every 2 weeks. The team value visibility and transparency. And you can see this in the new the new burn down in the rapid boards. You see, when you hover over an item, you get a little bit more detail about what happened at that point. And the example I'm showing here is where an issue was added to the sprint after the agreement. So this shows the scope change, and the team now has an extra 5 points they need to work that they didn't agree to. In the GreenHopper area, we also have large wall boards. The board you see there is showing our task board, and this is visible to not only the team but anyone who walks past. And this board, we use column constraints, so this is highly visible if one of our constraints, typically the awaiting QA column, becomes a bottleneck. So as a team, we iterate as we iterate on the product. It's a continual process of improvement and refinement. So at the end of each iteration, we have our review, and then we have a retrospective where we talk about the things that went well and the things that didn't go so well. And we look at ways to form actions to fix those things. We're always looking to improve. And the GreenHopper team has varied the way they've worked. We've done 3-week sprints, 2-week sprints, 1-week sprints. We have worked in Kanban when we produced the Kanban boards, and we switched to Scrum when we did the Scrum boards. And it's been really interesting to feel these differences. So for the Rapid board, we moved to 1-week iterations for a number of weeks. We did this so they could rapidly prototype and experiment as we went, and anything that we tried didn't work, we could take out quickly. And at the end of each week, the product was potentially shippable, sometimes just through GreenHopper Labs. So I'd like to share with you how we iterated on the Rapid board for the first 10 weeks. In week 1, you can see that the results of a JIRA filter, which is what the Rapid boards are based on, are just presented on the page. But by week 2, we're now organizing these in columns. So there's a column for each transition. By week 3, we have these already working for drag and drop. So you can just pick up an issue and transition it to the next state. And we also include a detail view so that you can find more about that issue. By week 4, we made the transitions configurable. And we now have drop zones. So if you have multiple transitions in a column, you can select which one you want. By week 5, you can actually add more columns and rename them. And we overhauled the UI. By week 6, we see our first swim lane. Now, the first iteration on the swim lane was a hard-coded single swim lane. And this was just for blockers, so-called expedite swim lane. We also update the detail view to have inline edit. Week 7 sees the introduction of the column constraints and our first report, which was the control chart. And by week 8, you can now edit that swim lane that I mentioned before with any valid JQL. And here's the swim lane. You can see the red one there, and everything else is shown below it. By week 8, we iterate on the control chart and we add standard deviation. And by week 9, excuse the test data, but that's a cumulative flow diagram. And by week 10, we now have multiple custom swim lanes. So you can see just in 10 weeks, we've worked on the swim lanes 3 different ways, but we've just iterated and improved that over time. And this is the board just recently. So it turns out that 1 week is only 4 days. And the reason for that is because aside from the tasks, we had the overhead that James mentioned earlier of a demo, retrospective and planning meeting, and also our 20% time, which we actually fondly named 7% during this time because it was reduced. And so the negatives for those were that there was a little bit too much administration overhead and the sprints were easily affected by, say, someone being sick. But on the positive side, it was an extremely exciting pace, and it was great to see such rapid change. And our feedback loop was very short. So for GreenHopper, we love to get feedback and we collect it. I'll show you more about that. So the first feedback we ever get is from the team itself, because we use the product ourselves. So if there's something that we need, we're the first ones to ask for it. Then we have our internal customers, our dog fooders, that's Atlassians using other Atlassian products. And they always tell us what they think. And then we have external customers, sometimes on early access programs. Now the feedback we get may not always be what we want to hear, but it should keep us on track. So we collect feedback from a number of methods. As Sharif mentioned earlier, the issue collector plugin. This is a simple link to a web form where people can anonymously give feedback, or they can give their email address. We also have a public backlog at jira@atlassian.com. And we have GreenHopper Labs, which is our early access opt-in program. We also conduct customer interviews. And as a plug, if you're interested in being involved, then please sign up over at the usability testing. So we often hear feedback as we're working on something from a customer using the previous version that they really want that thing that we're working on, which is kind of great to hear because we know we're on track. And we even get feedback on how well we are at responding to feedback. So what do we do with the feedback? Well, we don't just have a knee-jerk reaction. We look at the bigger picture and we see how customers are currently failing, maybe hacking the product, going the long way around to achieve something. And we see patterns in these problems and we try and form a solution to cover all of that. So I'd just like to propose some takeaways. Firstly, if you can empower your team with a 20% or a FedEx Day initiative, then there's significant benefits. It gives the developers a chance to shine and to polish the products in ways that they feel are really needed. And any increased engagement, any of the activities I mentioned before, like story mapping, paper prototyping, or even have a design wall or something similar where the team can all collaborate on something. And if you're not doing Agile yet, but you're in this room, you're obviously interested. So somehow you're going to have to make that happen. If you're doing Agile already, but you're maybe not doing it fairly, then consider that if you give the benefits to your team members, to your developers, then everyone will benefit from that. And if you're doing Agile, you're not getting the results you want, then try something new. Now that may be to change your iteration length. When we went to 1 week, it was a massive success for the thing we were trying to do at that point. And the other thing you might want to do, say you're doing Scrum, but you continually miss your commitments, then maybe try Kanban for a while. And finally, feedback from real users. If you get it early and often, it should keep you on track. And the shorter those feedback loops, the quicker you can respond and deliver value to your customers. Thank you.